Okay, let's unpack this. You've sent over excerpts from Shakespeare's Othello, specifically the opening acts.
Right, the start of it all.
Our mission is to cut through the beautiful language and get right to the engine of this tragedy. The characters, the initial sparks of conflict, and the plot points that set everything in motion.
Think of it as seeing the blueprints of a disaster unfolding, maybe,
Right.
without getting lost in every single detail.
Exactly. And what's immediately striking as we dive into these early scenes is how, well, efficiently Shakespeare lays the groundwork.
He really doesn't waste a single line, does he?
Can see it.
Establishing the resentments, the suspicions, all the things that are going to consume Othello later on.
Right. We have the persons represented, which gives us our initial cast list, plus the very tense opening of Act 1 and then that shift to Cyprus at the start of Act 2.
And the goal is to understand the core relationships.
Yeah.
The simmering tensions right from the get-go.
Precisely. And here's where it gets, well, really interesting,
Mm.
because the play throws us right into a moment of betrayal, almost immediately.
Absolutely. That very first scene in Venice, it just plunges us into this clandestine chat between Rodrigo and Iago.
And Rodrigo is clearly feeling played.
Oh, yeah. He's accusing Iago, basically saying, hey, you've been taking my money but not delivering regarding Desdemona.
It's a fantastic opening, actually, because it immediately shows us Iago's manipulative nature.
Right off the bat, he's already exploiting someone for his own gain.
So what does this first exchange tell us about Iago's feelings towards Othello himself?
Well, Rodrigo's upset about Desdemona marrying Othello, that's one thing, but Iago's animosity, it runs much deeper.
Okay.
He reveals that raw professional jealousy, doesn't he? The fact Othello promoted Cassio, this Florentine theorist, basically,
Instead of him.
instead of Iago, yeah. And he makes a point of saying, three great ones of the city recommended him. It's pure wounded pride,
Okay.
ambition thwarted.
So these two disgruntled guys decide to, take their anger public by waking up Brabantio.
And the way they do it, their methods are deliberately crude, designed to just get the biggest reaction possible.
That infamous line.
Making the beast with two backs. Yeah. It's not just vulgar, it's calculated to inflame Brabantio's prejudices, shock him into action, playing on the outsider thing.
And shouting about thieves. Thieves!
Uh-huh.
In the middle of the night, stirring up panic. It's like psychological warfare.
Totally. They're not just informing him, they're planting seeds of panic, of outrage, assaulting his honor, his authority as a father. Iago knows exactly which buttons to push.
Brabantio's first reaction is fury at Rodrigo, right? The suitor he had already rejected.
Yeah, he blames him first. But then there's that interesting bit where he recalls a dream.
Ah, yes, the dream.
A dream that sort of mirrored this elopement. It's subtle, but it adds this layer of unease, maybe, like fate or something darker is involved, makes his acceptance feel almost inevitable.
So Brabantio gathers his men, determined to confront Othello. But when they find him, in Act 1, Scene 2, the contrast is pretty stark.
Huge contrast. Brabantio is all fire and accusations. Othello, remarkably composed.
How does that tell us about Othello at this point?
His calmness, it speaks volumes about his self-assurance, his standing. He defends himself not with anger, but by reminding everyone of his service to Venice, establishes him as controlled, authoritative.
But just as this personal showdown is about to, maybe get violent, external events intervene.
Right, the news from Cyprus, urgent. The Ottoman fleets changed course, heading for Cyprus instead of Rhodes.
Suddenly, Othello the general is indispensable.
Exactly. Venice needs him. Brabantio's private grievance, however serious to him, gets pushed aside by the needs of the state.
Which leads us to the Duke's Council scene, Act 1, Scene 3, and Brabantio doubles down, accusing Othello of witchcraft.
Yeah, and that accusation tells us a lot about the society, doesn't it? The underlying racism.
Oh, so?
Well, Brabantio can't accept his daughter would choose a Moor, so he defaults to this idea of, black magic, unnatural influence. It's about othering Othello.
But Othello's defense is incredible, so eloquent.
It really is. He explains how Desdemona fell for his stories, his life, his struggles. Not magic, but shared humanity, empathy, the power of narrative.
And crucially, Desdemona speaks up for herself.
She does. Confirms Othello's account, asserts her love, her choice. It's a powerful moment of female agency, standing up to her father.
The Duke, being pragmatic, sees the bigger picture. Othello is needed.
The war effort comes first. So Brabantio has to accept it, but not without that chilling warning.
Look to her more if thou hast eyes to see. She has deceived her father, and may thee.
It's like a poison dart, isn't it? Planted right at the start. A seed of doubt, maybe tiny at first, but it's there. Brabantio's own sense of betrayal becomes ammunition for Iago later.
Absolutely. And the scene ends with Rodrigo totally despairing and Iago's first big soliloquy. Rodrigo wants out.
He's ready to drown himself, but Iago, the master manipulator, talks him down. Why?
He needs him, right?
Needs his money, needs him as a tool. Rodrigo's desperation makes him easy to handle. A useful idiot, essentially.
And that soliloquy. Iago lays it all out. He hates Othello for the promotion.
Still simmering about that? But he adds another layer, doesn't he? That suspicion.
About Emilia, his wife.
Yeah, he mentions this rumor, maybe just a suspicion in his own head, that Othello and Cassio have slept with Emilia. He admits he's not sure, but it adds this personal, almost sexual resentment to the mix. Makes his revenge feel even more twisted.
And he's clear about his plan.
Yeah.
Use Rodrigo. Use his own cunning to bring Othello down. Even talks about cuckolding him.
Calls it a sport, which is disturbing, shows a complete lack of morality, almost enjoying the idea of causing pain.
And he specifically targets Cassio's good qualities, his politeness towards Desdemona.
Exactly. Well credited, he calls it. He sees how Cassio's normal courtly manners can be twisted, misinterpreted, especially by someone Iago plans to make jealous. That's the crack he's going to widen.
So Act 1 sets up this incredibly tense foundation. You've got the characters, the motives, Iago's plot starting to weave its threads, and Othello off to war in Cyprus.
And Act 2 just drops us right into that new chaotic setting.
Right. Act 2, Scene 1, Cyprus. There's a violent storm raging.
It feels like a metaphor, doesn't it? For the emotional storm about to break. Montano and the others, they're anxious, waiting for news about the fleets, the Turks.
And the news, when it comes, is kind of ironic. The storm scattered the Turkish fleet.
Destroyed most of it, yeah. So the external threat, the reason they're all there, is basically gone.
Which means
the danger is now internal. The external conflict resolves, making space for the personal tragedy Iago is engineering. No distractions from the war.
the Venetian ships start arriving, but not all at once. Cassio gets there first.
And his first thought is for Othello's safety, which really highlights their good relationship at this point.
He also has some very high praise for Desdemona.
Oh, yeah. He hath achieved Medad, that paragon's description and wild fame. He paints her as this perfect ideal, which just makes what happens later even more heartbreaking.
Then the next ship arrives, carrying Iago, Emilia, and Desdemona herself.
And Cassio greets them all very courteously, including kissing Emilia, a standard greeting, really.
But not to Iago.
Now, Iago's mind immediately twists it, sees it as potential evidence. And his cynical aside about women's tongues just shows his general misogyny, his tendency to see the worst.
Which leads into that whole banter section. Iago holding court, making these sort of witty, but actually quite nasty comments about women with Desdemona and Emilia.
It's presented as humor, but it's deeply cynical, isn't it? Reducing women to stereotypes. It's another window into his unpleasant worldview.
But the really chilling part is his aside during all this. He repeats his suspicion about Othello and Cassio with Emilia and spells out his plan to use Cassio's politeness.
With as little a web as this will I ensnare as great a fly as Cassio. That line is key. Small, innocent actions twisted into a deadly trap. We see his mind working, plotting right there.
And poor Rodrigo still hanging around Cyprus, still fixated on Desdemona.
Still believing Iago's lies. Iago now feeds him this idea that Desdemona is actually falling for Cassio.
Do you see?
Oh, yeah. And he gives Rodrigo a new task. Provoke Cassio tonight while Cassio is on duty. It's amazing Rodrigo keeps buying it.
This shows how desperate he is, I guess.
Yeah.
And how good Iago is at manipulating that desperation.
Exactly. He keeps Rodrigo hooked with false hope while using him to stir up trouble that serves his agenda against Cassio and Othello.
Which brings us to that crucial drinking scene. Act 2, Scene 3.
Infamous, really. Iago's goal is simple. Get Cassio drunk. He knows Cassio can't handle his liquor well.
Cassio tries to resist initially, doesn't he?
He does. He knows it's his weakness. But Iago uses peer pressure, songs, the whole atmosphere of celebration after the storm. He wears him down, master manipulator of the social setting.
And while this is happening, Iago is also working on Montano, the former governor.
Right. Subtly dropping hints about Cassio's drinking, suggesting maybe he's not reliable enough for this position, undermining his reputation before anything even happens.
Setting the stage.
Precisely. So when the fight breaks out, it seems to confirm Iago's concerns.
And the fight happens because Rodrigo provokes Cassio, just as Iago planned.
Yep. Cassio, drunk and angry, lashes out, ends up fighting Montano, who tries to intervene. Chaos erupts. The alarm bell rings.
And Othello arrives. demanding answers.
This is Iago's moment. He pretends he doesn't want to speak ill of Cassio, feigns reluctance.
Mr. Honesty.
Honest Iago, exactly. But then he tells this carefully edited version of the story, blames Cassio entirely, downplays Roderigo's part, completely hides his own role in starting it all.
And Othello buys it, completely trusts Iago's account.
Tragically, yes, and the judgment is swift and severe. He dismisses Cassio on the spot.
Cassio, I love thee, but never more be officer of mine. Ouch.
It's a huge moment. The first major, tangible victory for Iago's plot. Cassio loses his position, his reputation. He's isolated, vulnerable.
And utterly devastated.
Yeah.
His speech about reputation is heartbreaking.
It really is. Reputation, reputation, reputation. Oh, I have lost my reputation. He sees it as the core of his being.
And who's right there to offer friendly advice?
Honest Iago, of course, with that sickeningly false sympathy. He tells Cassio the best way back into Othello's favor is through Desdemona.
Knowing full well how he plans to twist that.
Absolutely. Our general's wife is now the general. He frames it as helpful advice, use her influence, but he's really setting Cassio up to look like he's inappropriately seeking Desdemona's help, fueling the jealousy plot.
Even Roderigo complains at the end of the act, right? He's broke, he got beat up, and Desdemona's no closer.
Yeah, he's starting to grumble. But Iago, smooth as ever, reassured him, says getting Cassio fired was a huge step, part of the plan, convinces him to stick with it, maybe give him more money.
Wow. Iago's control is just total.
It really is. He just keeps everyone dancing to his tune, exploiting their weaknesses.
So by the end of these first two acts, the scene is absolutely set. The characters are in place, the conflicts are boiling, Iago's scheme is well underway, and everything's shifted to this tense, isolated setting of Cyprus.
Indeed. What we see here, for you, the learner, is just masterful dramatic construction. Shakespeare gives us everything we need, the motivations, the vulnerabilities, the first steps of the manipulation, creating this powerful sense of impending doom.
So wrapping this part up for you, the learner, you now have, hopefully, a really solid foundation of the initial dynamics in Othello. We've seen Iago planting those seeds of jealousy and resentment.
We've seen the different personalities, Othello's initial confidence, Cassio's honor, Iago's malice, Desdemona's loyalty.
And how the tensions just ramp up in Cyprus now that the external threat is gone.
And think about this. Brabantio's warning about Desdemona maybe being deceptive, it's just hanging there, isn't it?
It really is a hook for doubt later on.
And Iago's motives. Is it really just the promotion or that suspicion about Amelia? Or is it something even darker, maybe just a love of destruction? It feels complex.
Yeah, it does. And how Cassio's totally decent intentions are basically going to become weapons used against him.
Exactly. His attempts to get his job back, helped by Desdemona, will be twisted into proof.
So this deep dive, it really just scratches the surface of these opening acts. What stands out most to you, the learner? What questions pop into your head about trust, about appearance versus reality, about prejudice, or maybe about ambition and resentment?
Perhaps you'll be tempted to see exactly how these initial conflicts spiral outwards, how Iago turns these small cracks into utter devastation.
That's definitely a deep dive for another time, but for now, you've got that essential groundwork laid out.